Hey there, fellow knowledge seeker. Ready to unlock the secrets behind those talking machines everyone's buzzing about? We're doing a deep dive on large language models, or LLMs for short, and you might be surprised to learn this tech isn't as new as you think.
That's right. The foundation for today's LLMs was actually laid way back in the 1950s.
The 1950s, seriously.
It's wild to think about scientists then grappling with how to teach computers something as nuanced as human language.
Okay, let's unpack that. The 1950s.
Yeah,
Seriously, what were they even working with back then? It's not like they had mountains of data and lightning-fast processors just lying around.
exactly. Their approach was fascinating, if a bit tedious. Imagine trying to program every single rule of grammar into a computer. That was essentially the name of the game back then, hard-coded rules.
Yeah.
It was effective for very specific tasks, but nowhere near the sophisticated language processing we see today.
So how did we go from manually programming grammar rules to AI that can write poems and generate code? There must have been a pretty monumental shift somewhere along the way.
There was, and the ebook points to the 1990s as a pivotal decade.
Okay.
This is when researchers started incorporating statistics and probability into language processing. Instead of relying solely on those rigid rules, they began training computer models on massive amounts of text data, allowing the machines to learn patterns and relationships in language organically.
Ah, so this is where the seeds of today's LLMs were really sown. But even with this statistical approach, those early models must have been limited by the technology of the time, right?
Absolutely. Imagine trying to process the entirety of Wikipedia with the computers available in the 90s.
Yeah,
It just wasn't feasible. It wasn't until the early 2000s, with the explosion of the internet and advancements in processing power, that things really took off.
that makes sense. More data, more power, more learning potential. So this brings us to the 2000s. What were some of the key breakthroughs during this period that paved the way for the LLMs we know and maybe even love today?
The 2000s were really about laying the groundwork. We saw the rise of deep learning, which uses artificial neural networks to mimic the human brain's ability to learn from data.
Okay.
This, combined with access to massive datasets and increased computing power, led to significant progress. But the real game changer came in 2017 with the introduction of something called the transformer model.
Okay, transformer model. It sounds like we're getting into the really technical stuff now. Can you break that down for me? What's so special about this model compared to what came before?
It's all about how these models process language. Previous models analyzed text sequentially, word by word, which was slow and often missed the bigger picture.
Right.
The transformer model changed the game by processing all the words in a sentence simultaneously, allowing it to understand context and relationships between words much more effectively.
So it's like instead of reading a sentence one word at a time, this transformer model can see the whole picture at once.
Exactly. It's like the difference between trying to understand a painting by looking at each brushstroke individually versus taking in the entire composition at a glance. This breakthrough in processing power and contextual understanding paved the way for the incredibly sophisticated LLMs we have today.
That makes sense. So we've gone from manually programming grammar rules to statistical models to these powerful deep learning architectures like the transformer model. It's been a long and winding road. But where does ChatGPT fit into all of this? It feels like that was the moment LLMs really broke into the public consciousness.
You're absolutely right. ChatGPT, released by OpenAI in 2022, was a watershed moment. It took all these underlying advancements in LLM technology and made them accessible to everyone.
Right.
Suddenly, you didn't need to be a programmer or an AI expert to interact with these powerful models. You could simply have a conversation.
It was like magic almost. You could ask ChatGPT to write you a poem, explain complex concepts, or even generate code, and it would do it, often in a way that was indistinguishable from a human response.
Precisely. And that's just scratching the surface. The ebook dives into a whole range of applications for LLMs that go way beyond just chatbots. For example, have you ever spent hours analyzing customer reviews for your business or trying to summarize a lengthy research paper?
Oh, tell me about it. Just last week, I had to sift through pages and pages of market research reports, and it was like swimming through a sea of data. Are you telling me LLMs can help with that?
They can. LLMs excel at tasks like sentiment analysis, where they can quickly analyze large amounts of text and extract the underlying emotional tone. Imagine being able to instantly gauge customer sentiment towards your product or brand from thousands of reviews. That's the power of LLMs in action.
That would be a game changer for businesses. No more manually reading through endless feedback forms. What other LLM applications does the ebook highlight?
One that stood out to me was in the field of software development. Imagine being able to describe a program you want to build to an LLM, and it generates the code for you.
Wait, seriously? So instead of spending weeks or even months writing code, you can just tell an LLM what you want, and it does the heavy lifting.
It's still early days, and LLMs can't yet build complex software applications from scratch. But they are becoming increasingly good at generating code snippets, identifying errors, and even suggesting improvements to existing code bases.
That's incredible. It seems like we're on the verge of a major shift in how we approach tasks that involve language, whether it's writing, coding, or analyzing data.
We are. But like with any powerful technology, there are important considerations to keep in mind when it comes to choosing and using LLMs responsibly and effectively. And the ebook doesn't shy away from that. It actually dedicates a whole section to the different approaches to using LLMs, namely proprietary services versus open source models.
Okay, let's dive into that. What's the difference and what are the trade-offs to consider? So you've got me thinking about the different ways to actually use these LLMs. What are the key differences between proprietary services and these open source models?
Well, think of it like choosing between a ready-to-use kitchen appliance and a set of high-quality ingredients and recipes. Proprietary services like ChatGPT are like that sleek, all-in-one appliance.
Okay.
It's incredibly user-friendly, constantly being updated with new features, and you don't need to be a tech whiz to use it effectively.
That does sound appealing. Convenience is key, especially when you're first starting out with a new technology, but I imagine there are some trade-offs with that ease of use, right?
Exactly. When you use a proprietary service, you're essentially handing over your data to a third party.
Right.
They process it, generate the output you requested, and you get the benefits of their powerful LLMs without having to manage the technical complexities. However, this means you have less control over your data and how it's being used.
That makes sense. Data privacy and security are definitely top of mind for a lot of people these days. So, if you're more privacy conscious or want more control over your data, open source models might be the way to go.
They could be. It's like having that set of ingredients and recipes. You have the freedom to choose your ingredients, tweak the recipe to your liking, and even share your culinary creations with others.
Okay.
Open source models offer a level of transparency, flexibility, and customization that you don't get with proprietary services.
Okay, that's exciting. It sounds like open source models give you the power to really shape the technology to your specific needs. But isn't it a lot more complicated? Like, don't you need to be a coding expert to even know where to begin?
It might seem intimidating at first, but the open source community is incredibly vibrant and supportive. Plus, platforms like Hugging Face have made it significantly easier to access, experiment with, and even fine-tune these powerful models.
Hold on, Hugging Face. That sounds familiar, but can you refresh my memory? What exactly is Hugging Face in the world of LLMs?
Think of Hugging Face as a giant hub or online community dedicated to everything LLMs, particularly open source ones. It's a place where researchers, developers, and enthusiasts share their models, collaborate on projects, and find resources to learn and build with LLMs. It's a game changer for making this technology more accessible.
That's incredible. It sounds like a playground for anyone interested in exploring the creative possibilities of LLMs without having to start from scratch. So, for those of us ready to dive into this world of talking machines, whether we're drawn to the convenience of proprietary services or the flexibility of open source models, where do we even begin?
The good news is you don't have to be a tech whiz or an AI expert to start exploring the power of LLMs. The ebook does a great job of highlighting resources for all levels.
Yeah, I was especially intrigued by that Databricks talk they mentioned. It sounds like a fantastic deep dive for anyone who wants to understand the nuts and bolts of building their own LLM. It seems like this technology is rapidly evolving, and the more you understand how it works, the better equipped you'll be to navigate its future.
Absolutely. And for those who prefer a more hands-on approach, the ebook also links to a comprehensive online course that teaches you how to develop production-ready LLM applications, complete with sample code and practical exercises.
That's perfect for those who learn by doing. I think this deep dive has given us a lot to think about. What started as a simple question about these so-called talking machines has opened up a whole new world of possibilities.
It has. And it's important to remember that we're still in the early stages of this technology. LMs are rapidly evolving, and their potential impact on how we communicate, create, and interact with the world around us is immense.
It really makes you wonder, what will we be saying about LLMs in a year, 5 years, 10 years from now?
Yeah.
What new breakthroughs and applications will we be discussing? What will you create with this power? I, for one, am excited to find out.
As am I. It's an exciting time to be exploring the world of LLMs.
It sure is. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. A huge thank you to you, our listeners, for joining us on this journey. Keep those thinking caps on, and we'll see you next time for another fascinating deep dive.